One of the more balanced top 25s I can recall in recent years. My top 25 that actually makes sense, coming to you in just moments. A reminder first, though, to hit the subscribe button if you have not already subscribed to this channel, whether you're an Iowa fan, a Big Ten fan, or a college basketball fan in general. We've got you covered each and every week with the release of these rankings, in addition to great post-game content after every Iowa Big Ten game, as well as college football, college basketball coverage all throughout the year. So again, hit the subscribe button and like this video if you have not already done so. So, week 14, here we are in early February, just over a month away from March Madness. It's time for my top 25 that actually makes sense. And it features no changes at the top. Auburn. Everybody was high on Auburn. I'm not bumping them up. So Auburn, I know they beat Alabama this week. Bama's beating people. They're losing to people. Auburn beat Georgia by 2. That's a bad Georgia team. They did the same thing with Mizzou. I'm not bumping them up to the 1 line. So they are not my number 1. Gonzaga's dominating teams. I keep talking about this. This week they beat a really good BYU team by 33. Gonzaga stays my number 1 team. Number 3, Purdue. The Boilermakers not hurting their case. Again, another good week for Matt Painter's squad. Kentucky continues to elevate its game. Marquee victories. Of course, they beat Kansas by a bunch of points in Lawrence just about a week ago. They will be my number 4 team. Texas Tech continues to win in what could be, arguably is, the best conference in the country in the Big 12. Duke, I know people get tired of seeing them up here, but they keep winning, and right now they're the best team in the ACC. Arizona with a fantastic week. I was really down on Arizona, but the Wildcats, what a week it was by defeating USC and UCLA. That is a solid week for the Arizona Wildcats. I'm still not high on the Pac-12, but you're seeing UCLA struggle at times. You're seeing Arizona struggle at times. We've also seen USC struggle at times. Kansas, they are my number 8 team, bouncing back in a big way this week. Of course, the win against Baylor, 24-point victory over the Baylor Bears, who are really slipping in my rankings. Wisconsin there at 9, of course. Losing to Illinois is never a bad thing. I mean, it's never going to be a bad loss. I think Illinois has a chance at being the best in the Big Ten, honestly. I still think Purdue is the best team as of right now. But Wisconsin also had to squeak by Penn State. So I did move Wisconsin down here, and you see at 10, Houston. They go up a couple spots. Now, Houston, I know a lot of people are higher on Houston than I am. They're starting to win games by a better margin. Houston beating Cincinnati by 22 points. That's going to help them. That's a good Cincinnati team, not a great team, but Houston now is in my top 10. Let's move to 11 through 25. Providence keeps winning. They're at number 11, although they had a pretty soft schedule for the week. Baylor falls to number 12. Illinois continuing to rise my rankings. Again, they've had some impressive victories, even without the likes of Kofi Cockburn and Andre Curbelo at times. Villanova, another team that I'm still fairly high on at this point. They played a real tough schedule collectively. Ohio State at 15. They had their game against Iowa canceled, made it up. Or I shouldn't say made it up, but they did win this weekend against Maryland. UCLA down to 16. Marquette at 17. Michigan State getting blown out on the road against a good Rutgers team. Rutgers, man, the RAC is a tough place to play. I'm still liking Michigan State in March, but they go down to 18. Tennessee at 19. Notre Dame new into the poll at 20. They just keep winning. An ACC that is down, but certainly Notre Dame looks like maybe playing second fiddle to Duke right now. North Carolina, boy, they really got, we didn't talk about that earlier, but Duke really took care of North Carolina this weekend. Arkansas, they're fresh into the poll at 21. Texas, they, of course, lose to Texas Tech, but beat Iowa State handily. St. Mary's is in my poll now at 23. Of course, they actually played a decent non-conference schedule, including Wisconsin. Murray State in there at 24. Why does Murray State make the poll? Well, Murray State actually played Memphis. They played Auburn. They did lose to East Tennessee State back in November. That's a good basketball program. Certainly not a loss that's going to help them. But they're pretty much dominating competition. They beat Belmont on the road by 22 this past week. knocking off Southern Illinois, Edwardsville. I understand it's lesser competition, but as I've said with Gonzaga, if you're going to play in a weak conference, you better be dominating teams, and that's for the most part what Murray State is doing. 2 wins this week, both by double figures, one of which was on the road. And again, played a decent non-conference schedule. I really see a difference in those top 20 teams or so, and then after 20, it's hard for me to accumulate a few teams to make up the final 4 to 5 teams in my top 25 that actually make sense. Now, UConn, they are my number 25 team right now, despite a rough week for the Huskies. And if you're doing the math on this and you're tracking this week to week, LSU, rough week for them. Iowa State, of course, we talked about the blowout loss to Texas. Xavier squeaked by Butler, but then found a way to lose at home to an unranked DePaul team. Miami sliding as well. So certainly some changes there towards the bottom of the poll. But again, I think that top 20 is really lock solid. There are some teams in the Big Ten that honestly, and I could say the same thing about the Big 12, there are some teams in both conferences that if they were to be playing in the ACC or the Pac-12, I think you'd probably be able to make a case for them being in the top 25 because I think they just win more games. But you can't, there's no way at some point, it's like Alabama. Alabama plays in a decent SEC conference. But again, you win, you lose, you win, you lose, you win, you lose. At some point, you have to factor in just your overall record. Now, again, my top 25 rankings, the reason they actually make sense is because they're based off resume. They're based off quality wins, quality losses, if you will. And certainly margin of victory plays into this as well, and what type of schedule you play and what type of conference you play in. But again, there are Big Ten teams. What I'm saying is there are Big Ten teams that can make a move here in February if they get hot. Iowa being one, Indiana being another. Even a TCU in the Big 12, if they get hot, have a chance to move into the top 25. Again, I think the top 20 starting to separate themselves, and I still abide by, I think there's probably a top 7 or 8 in the country right now, although Arizona surprised some folks this week, surprised me. And then there might be a kind of a second tier between 10, 11, and then 20. So you might actually have your top 10, you got 11 through 20, and then maybe everybody else after that. Again, that's kind of how I see it here on Sunday, February 6th, here week 14, entering week 14 of college basketball. Again, subscribe here if you haven't already done so for our weekly top 25 that actually makes sense.